All right. So yeah, I just want to officially welcome you to our first Thursday gem drop for Black and Brown and Employer Brand. Listen, this is an inaugural pioneerial, okay, that's not a word, but y'all know that this is going to be something special. So just thank you for just joining us virtually. Now, I hope that we'll be doing things together in person soon as well. I do believe, Ashton, you dropped the Talent Brand Summit Chicago information in the group.
So the Talent Brand Alliance is having their second summit this year in Chicago in October, and Black and Brown and Employer Brand will be having a meetup there. So if you are able to attend the conference or you are in the Chicagoland area, I will have more details soon on the exact time and location, and I'd love to see y'all in person.
Awesome. So officially introducing myself, I'm Chris Bartley. I'm a UX and storytelling strategist, and we have two individuals that we're going to be parlaying this conversation with this evening. And so, James, I'm going to pass it to you, and then Ashton, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. James Marable. I am a product marketing employer brand manager at Amazon. Just started there the beginning of May. Prior to that, I was with or led employer branding for Eli Lilly and Company Pharmaceuticals. And then prior to that, I started the employer brand program for Macy's. So I've been in the space since 2013, fell into it. Honestly, when I started having conversations about the role, I owned a clothing store. My background is marketing. I quit that, opened this clothing store, ran it for 3.5 years, and randomly, somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn to talk about this social media job at Macy's. And I just took the call, and I'm like, oh, it's Macy's, whatever. And they were talking about employer brand. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know anything about recruiting, but it seemed like a good opportunity to get into social media for, such a large organization. So I did it thinking that, I'll probably be there for a month or two, and quit or get fired, because I was so used to, running my own business, and I had that still going. So it was kind of like my life was kind of set up one way. But when I got into it, I started to understand what recruiters did, and then just drew all the parallels into marketing, and saw that, recruiters were just salespeople, and, I was the marketing department for them, creating content, creating, stories around, the experience within Macy's. So really fell in love with it. Started going to conferences in 2014. There literally were no Black people at those conferences. Social recruiting strategies conference. That's actually where I met Brian at that conference. He was one of the speakers, and I was just kind of just in the space, just soaking it up, just seeing all these recruiters trying to figure out marketing. But marketing was my background, so it was kind of what's the word? I was beyond where they were, kind of in that space. So in those conversations, they were starting to see oh, this guy actually understands marketing. So then I started getting requests to kind of speak at certain things. So I would give my perspective from a content creation and just from a general marketing perspective, and not really kind of talking about just actual employer branding. But then I'd say in 2000, around 17 or 18, I started speaking at the Social Recruiting Strategies Conference, spoke at the inaugural Talent Brand Summit, did a few more, did some stuff with the Human Capital Institute. Then, we went virtual, so I did a bunch of stuff virtually, but just love this space, love creating, really found my niche in this. Honestly, I really didn't expect myself to be in corporate America ever again. So when I found myself back into it and found kind of what I like to do about it, or with this, what we're doing, and being able to kind of create and still feel like I'm a small business within, this large entity, with all the exposure that we get. Obviously, we interface with people that, the average person on your peer level, whether you're a manager, associate level, that people in other roles on your same level wouldn't necessarily get. So I saw that early on, and really kind of took advantage of that, really, found a way to, to be an advisor, to speak to those higher level people, with confidence, with suggestions, with in a way that, kind of made me stand out, but without standing out, or without trying to stand out, actually being valuable. So really love the space, really love talking about it. I'm definitely a non-traditional corporate person, just based on just my experiences, and just, looking forward to kind of chopping it up with y'all.
All right. Thanks, James. Ashton,
Man, I got to make my intro long now. Okay.
No,
I was rambling. I didn't have an intro. So
Hey, I'm Ashton. Brand is usually "Hey Ashton," so it just works as a greeting. Just cut out the middle part. Yep. Started Black and Brown and Employer Brand, just so as an experiment, just to see if anybody else was out there. And now there are 64 people in the group, which is crazy to me.
It was crazy when it was 20.
Right? So wanted to create more spaces for us to be able to, one, be ourselves, and two, learn, grow, and become the thought leaders that I know we already are. I started my talent brand career at GoDaddy, where I kind of stumbled into it. I was speaking at a conference as a web designer, and my boss was like, you look like you like this company and like to talk about it. So come on over to this team. Did that at GoDaddy for about 3 or 4 years. Hopped to Meta, hopped out of Meta. Now I'm at Dropbox, where I am heading up go-to-market for the global recruiting strategy for Talent Brand. And yeah, just want to be able to have a space where we are able to share thoughts, learn, grow, realize our superpowers as diverse individuals in this industry, and being the target audience that these companies are trying to pull in, and having that advantage of knowing exactly what we want and what we want to see. So yeah, we can just get started and roll on in then.
All right, yeah, let's dive right in. So for those of you that are here with us live, you're hearing this call, or you're watching the loss of words here. What is it called when it's later published?
Oh, a rebroadcast.
Thank you. My goodness. Or you're watching the rebroadcast. What we're talking about today is being more than just a token. And oftentimes when we hear that word, it has a negative connotation, right? And so with this understanding of many times being the quote unquote only in an environment, whether if it's work or an event, I want to lead off with this question. So Ashton, James, we all attended the Talent Brand Summit back in March of this year, and we also were featured in the promo video. Can you describe your experience? Now, don't give us the highlight reel, like give us the holistic. Yeah, it was accurate in the video. However, I would also like to have the emotions and the feelings of what you would also be able to describe here in this chat with us.
Oh, how'd you get muted?
I think you're muted, James.
I muted myself. Okay. So like I told you two, Ashton and Chris before, like I haven't seen the video, but I'm 100% sure that the video makes it look more diverse than it was. However, my experience there, I think I try to not look at it from the perspective of, like there were only a couple, persons of color. When you have one of those highlight reels, it's also like a sales tactic. So like maybe them seeing us will bring more persons of color, to the next summit. And even if it doesn't, like from an experience standpoint, I look at it as an opportunity to kind of hear what other people are doing, hear what, where people are succeeding, where people are failing, where people are having trouble. Like it's a learning opportunity. I'm an introvert that lives an extrovert's life. So whatever setting that I'm in most cases, like I'm probably the most quiet person, unless like pushed to talk, like in a scenario like this, because I actually do have a lot to say. I just don't always say it. So in an event like that, where I'm not a speaker, I'm not a facilitator, I'm just there to kind of watch. A big part of that actual summit as well. Like I had mentioned in our pre-talk, I was working on a lot of different things, so I was in and out. Like I was interviewing people for a team that I was growing at my job at the time, but I was also interviewing for the job that I have now. Then I also had like this Jordan brand project that I was running that was happening that week as well in Cincinnati. So like I had to make sure that was going on. So I would pop in when I could. But I haven't, I've already been to the conference. I've done it virtually. I've done it in person. So I already kind of had a feeling for like what it was going to be and kind of like where everybody would probably be. Like a lot of the OG type people, like you would see them come in like after the sessions, or like there were a couple different people that, I would talk to like at dinner, like that weren't even in any of the sessions because they'd already done it before. So I think like, from the perspective of being able to kind of connect with people at your table, I was able to do that in a sense. But there weren't not necessarily like a lot of people that I'll say like were like me, me and Deanna, we started talking like the last night. Like, so like, if I was a more outgoing person, like I would say like I probably would have been able to talk to more people. But for me, like I'm more so like if someone doesn't introduce me or introduce themselves to me, like I don't usually talk to people. I don't think that anyone was standoffish or it was a bad time overall, but it definitely wasn't created from the perspective of, it being a diverse event, like for sure. But was it an opportunity to learn? Was it an opportunity to meet people? Yeah. And I think that, I was able to achieve that, that goal, for the amount of time that I was able to be there.
Yeah, Ashton, I'm not going to ask you the same question, but what I will do is just a little tweak. Have you ever been in an event where, because your experience may be, depending on where these kinds of events are, where you're typically used to being the only Black or brown person, have you ever gotten used to it?
Oh,
Meaning you go in and you're just like, this feels weird. Like, has there been like a sense of just, this is what the reality is, unless it changes, but were there any awkward feelings? And then I want you to transpose that to the Talent Brand Summit.
So, yes, I've definitely been in situations where I was the only, and I think in the beginning of that and being exposed into those realms and being pushed out into the forefront at the various companies I've worked at first it was awkward, and I was trying to figure out how to carry myself. What do I wear? How do I dress? What should I do with my hair? Got to put heat on it. Can't go outside with this afro. So like, I I did go through that for a while, but that's exhausting. And so at a certain point, I had to let that go and become comfortable in my own skin as myself wherever I go. So transposed to Summit, I would say for me, I got that awkward feeling again because it was my first talent brand industry event. So it was different from like, okay, I'm doing the recruiting at a tech conference, or, I'm doing my talent brand setup and capturing content at an event kind of thing. Whereas, okay, these are my peers and none of them look like me. Okay. So really had to step out of that because I did come dressed as my usual self. I did not plan to be anyone else. I left corporate Ashton at home. So I had to put on my big girl pants and walk in there and act like I wasn't in a crop top and sweatpants. So so yeah, I would say definitely I loved the event. I learned so much and met so many people, but I wish there would have been more diversity to lend to more diversity of thought when it came to the things that were covered and the topics that were covered at the event, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's another thing I got to stop saying is if that makes sense. I said what I said, it makes sense.
Let me jump in real quick though. Like one thing for me, like I'm a maker. So like in a lot of instances, I'm the only one in a lot of fronts. Like, so I'm from a very Black place. Like where most people, they don't have college educated parents, or, they weren't like going to college for them was like a goal. Like for me, like I always knew because my dad went, so like I already knew where my path was going to be. So like I've been in, in situations where because I spoke well, like I'm acting a certain way, or because I knew, how to do better for myself, that, or I'll get around white people and then I'm ghetto acting actually, because like that really is my background, but it's not. Like I'm a hybrid of sorts. And in a lot of instances, like I've always had to like make something happen. So like whether it's, opening my own store, whether it's starting an ERG at Macy's, whether it's like creating like in Cincinnati, like I've got the largest African American nonprofit here. They didn't exist for young professionals that basically acclimate all new people that come to the city to show them like, the places to go, where to get your haircut, where, like the good places to eat, like where can you come and be yourself and actually plant roots here. And then like just in general, like with, in the corporate structure, like I'm always trying to figure out a way to create whatever that gap is. So like when you look at this group that we have right here, this is a gap filler. Like, so that conference it was created by two white dudes. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, so like, it's not gonna be as diverse as it should be because they're two white dudes. So like, by creating this platform right here, this group, Ashton specifically, you're starting to fulfill, like the thing that you want to see in the world, the potential conference, or not to say that you even need to do a conference, or like, let's just say you start having sessions for this group within that conference, or you do create your own conference. Like now we're on a path to like be able to have, that true diversity because you're having a diverse person actually create. So a lot of times when we sit back and say, oh, well, I'm going to this white place and it's not Black enough, or it's not colorful enough. Well, they made it. So like, it's probably never going to be like that. So like, we have to also kind of grab hold and like, do without and have, little resources and have this room with, 8 people, just kind of chopping it up. But like this will snowball and become something bigger. So, at the same time, it could have been a better experience. But at the same time, you're able to see that gap and like, you're going to be able to make it. I already know where this is going. So, like this conversation is great and all, but it's like, we're actually already solving the problem before, it truly was one.
Well, Pearl has already spoken into existence. She says she's looking forward to that conference one day, Ashton. So, that's yeah. And yeah, guys, we enjoy like having the conversation while we're having the conversation. So feel free to chat in the comments while we're conversing. So I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to throw it over to you, Ashton, because you set it up for these two things, James. The first one is, I think that for me personally, I have come to the realization that it's really based on who my surroundings and who my community, the people that I have been around with as a professional, but even as just in my friend circle or even family, I have been less sensitive to being the only. And the only time that I become sensitive to it, where I realize where are the other people like me, is two things. The first one is if I don't know anybody, and if I'm not really too keen on the industry. This actually happened when I went to the Creative Problem Solving Institute back in 2012. Very first time that I realized that you can get paid thousands of dollars for going in the corporate world and playing with Legos as a consultant. I said, oh my goodness, it blew my mind. But I was the only Black, first of all, age-wise, young and Black professional that was there. And the difference for me with TBS was I knew people when I was there, right? My own colleagues, right, from work. And I was new to the industry, but there were other people who were as well. So it was like there's this commonality that almost shielded the other reality, which should have been probably the first reality, which is my identity. Is there anybody else like me? But I'm realizing this is because of a few things. And you mentioned it, James. What have I been raised to be sensitive to from childhood to adulthood? There are many Black and brown people who, when we go into a particular environment, we just we accept that that's the reality. So for many people, they're just like, racism doesn't exist. Now that's not my narrative, but they're just like, oh, you just got to work harder. You just got to do X, Y, and Z. When there are others who realize, and shout out to John Graham. I purchased a book while we were on here, so Plantation Theory. But there are others who realize, no, there's a system in place that no matter how hard you work, no matter how specialized you get, there it is. Let me see, I think I'm in the mirror. There you go. No matter how specialized you are, there's always going to be a particular, not always, but there is a particular structure that's designed to pretty much cap your performance or your success, right? The results. And it's becoming more and more evident because I'm a part of groups like these, where I become more sensitive to how important it is to have more of us in the room. It's not just about just because you have a beautiful brain and you have great ideas and you come together, that's all that matters. But you have to be in the community for that. But I'm the moderator. I'm not supposed to be talking like this. So Ashton, would you recommend other TV, talent brand, and EB professionals in this group to attend a future summit? And if so, why?
Well, I guess the biggest reason why is because the Black and Brown and EB group will be present at the summits and at the next summit and hopefully moving forward. But truly because it was a hell of an experience finally being in a room full of people where I don't have to sit there and explain exactly what I do, as everybody else does it. So it was nice to not even have to pass through that barrier of entry to conversation and just be able to jump right into conversations with knowledgeable people that have years of experience, that know what I do. They know the struggle, they know the ups and downs, they know the craziness. And if you just swing it right, there are some advantages to being the only in these types of spaces. But yeah, I would encourage people to go to the Talent Brand Alliance Summit. It was really nice. The sessions were thought out in a way that would benefit almost everybody in the room. So yeah, I have tons of takeaways. I still have notes I need to shuffle back through because now it's coming up in my job and I'm like, ooh, I know how to do that. Learn to that TBA. So yeah, I would recommend that folks attend, definitely.
Awesome. So James, we know that you weren't able to be fully present. Obviously, there were other things, other engagements that you had while being at the summit. But did you have a feeling of being the only? And I think you've already answered that. And how did you overcome it?
Yes, in a sense. But it wasn't. I think also it's twofold, because it's a personality thing, and then it's also being a person of color that doesn't try to fit in. So so for me, like I don't try to stand out and I don't try to fit in. I'm just myself. And the thing is, like, if someone talks to me, like, then it's just like, oh wow, this person actually has a bunch to say. So it's just kind of like, for me, like, I just kind of wait, like, all right, well, who's going to talk to me? Or if somebody does something that like I just have to talk to this person, like, for whatever reason, then okay, then I do. But in a sense, I do have those moments. But I think just like in life, to be honest, like I really have tried, like, ever since elementary school, like, honestly, like, I'm always the person that has something, like, whether it's a candy business that I used to have, or like I don't study, but I get good grades, like, and people are like, how do you do this? Like, just, I'm always the kind of person that, like, I want to be outstanding in such a way that, like, people come to me and want to, kind of pick my brain, and have that conversation. Like, I'm not really good at like really drawing attention or being loud, or going and meeting people and shaking hands and changing my voice and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't really do that. But in that sense, like, because I'm not like that, I can kind of stand alone for quite a while, but I'm also like very comfortable in that, in that skin, in that setting. I do think, like, in those moments where there were people that were there that didn't know me, they're just kind of just trying to figure it out. We would be at at these tables, like I'm in a session or whatever, and I just just try and add my input when it was time for me to add that input. But then I found that, like, once that happened, or once the conversation was had, then I didn't necessarily feel as, like I'm on this island. But yeah, it's definitely easy, like, in a conference like this, and this could be anywhere. I think, honestly, like, this conference encourages people to talk more than most. Like this one, the format of it is different. Like, usually at a conference, you're sitting in rows and you're just looking at somebody talk on the stage, versus being, at a round table, exchanging ideas, exchanging experiences based on prompts from the people on the stage. So I do think, like, that, that is what's very beneficial about the conference. But then also there is the scenario where, like, the one girl got the crown, like, if I didn't know who she was or nothing like that. Like, so, like, that was kind of weird. And, like, everybody's like, is this like the nerd prom? Like, what is going on? So, like, yeah, those scenarios or whatever, but, like, I don't know if that's necessarily a color thing. Say what?
Can you elaborate what the crown was?
Yeah, there was there was a point in the. Actually, you were there. Like there was something like somebody. I can't. Was it Allison?
Yeah, it was Allison Cruz.
Got a clown put on her head, and like everybody was like, oh, like she was like the cool
Because
person.
she won solo talent brander of the year
Yeah,
the year before, or no,
Okay.
or that year.
I think it was.
And
that
so
year.
then Tony, who had won it the year before, was passing on his crown to her. It was a whole thing. So
But it was all these white people that knew each other, and it was like a big deal. But it was like I didn't know them, so it was kind of like this is weird. Personally, like I mean that was a moment. Like I guess I could say that was I felt like the only in that regard. I didn't really know what was going on.
How do you navigate? So you mentioned finding ways, and you're so right about this, being intentional, listening, like active listening has to be so key so that you know when to insert yourself, so that you feel as if you are, not even you feel, but those that you were conversing with know that you're there, that you exist, you have something that you're bringing to this proverbial table. In our case, there were literal round tables. How have you done that outside of the summit? Would that be one of the keys, or what would you say would be one of the things that would help to navigate through the only feeling?
I think it's a little, because I came in employer branding when it was like more new. I mean, it's still relatively new, but I feel like I've, in a lot of sense, like people now, like I get LinkedIn messages from people like I would not know, like from Adam, you know, asking me, picking my brain about my trajectory and things like that. But like when I started, John, you know, you can attest to that. Like there was nobody really to ask. There's like Brian before us, or Charlotte before us. There's just a couple people. So it's kind of like, you know, if you meet them at a conference, then like, yeah, you can, you know, you can figure out who's who. Stacey's FR. I don't even know if she still does this stuff, but you know, there were those people. But like other than that, like for me, it's more so around like being the expert. Like what I found, like even just like now we have employer brand teams, but like even being the only one doing employer brand, and everybody in your department or everybody in the company thinks that you just play around on Facebook all day. Like, you know, like just even being able to kind of justify like what you do, you know, like that kind of thing. So like being always, for me, it's always about being knowledgeable, being assertive, being able to, I'm not answering questions because someone's questioning me. I'm telling them, you know, like what it is. Versus so like not necessarily deferring to, you know, to others, like even because at the end of the day, like these people don't know more than you, like that are that are, you know, that you're consulting with, whether you're a consultant externally of your company or you're in your company, you are a consultant no matter what. You're the expert. You have the job for a reason. Like these HR people don't know what they're talking about, especially when it comes to marketing and employer branding. So like being able to just assert yourself in that regard. Again, like it's not about being haughty or loud or like, you know, like, but just, you know, I've had instances where, you know, my leader was just an HR person. Like, so they didn't really know what I was doing. So like, I just made sure that anytime we talked, I had something valuable to say. You know, I find that like, cause my life is very broad. Like, you know, like I've got a party planning, like certain things, like having conversations with somebody about what they do on the weekend. Like it's cultural and it's also like lifestyle based as well. Like I'm not married. I don't have kids. Like I kick it, like, you know, like just to be honest, I'm very productive though. Like I'm into sneakers. Like, you know, there are a lot of people that can't relate to this, or they want to relate to it, and they don't really know how to talk about it. But like just making sure that like just people see you for who you are, you know, and they'll come. And being that only, I think in a lot of cases really affects you negatively when you're kind of scared to just be yourself. You know, like you have to be open and comfortable with like who you are in general as a human being and as an employee. Like, you know, wherever you're working at, like if you're confident in what you do, then like there's, you know, people can hate on you and try to make it seem like you're not doing anything. But if you know what you're doing and you can, you know, you're putting it out there, you're putting that work out there. You know, leaders know, like I'm big on leaders. Like I kind of calling on my party promotion. Like when I first started doing that, and I'm not from Cincinnati, I'm from Dayton, but I'm from Dayton, which is a smaller Ohio town. When I moved here to go to college, when I graduated, like this is one of those cities, it's a little big city, and it's like, what high school did you go to kind of thing. Like if they didn't grow up with you, like they don't really want to talk to you. But what I found is I stopped caring about my peers and started worrying about like who above, like who are the decision makers? And that worked in that industry. It works in corporate America. It works in, in organizations, nonprofits. Like if you're making contacts and building relationships with people that like are decision makers and are leaders, like your peers can't really affect you. And I think in a lot of cases, like especially like at a conference like this, these are our peers, in most cases. So it's just like, do they really matter? Like, can they really affect your career? Can they really affect your lifestyle? Not really. So like, if you look at it from that perspective, and you're living a fulfilling life, then being the only can actually become your benefit because you're not moving along with the herd.
So let's piggyback off of that. Ashton, you said that I had to learn how to humble brag to leadership. So we have 15 minutes. Can you believe time is flying?
Oh my God.
So we've got 15 minutes. We are going to have a section for group discussion where you can hop in, but by all means though, chop it up in the comments, because I'm reading those as well. And I'm going to be pulling those in, and then we're just going to open up the floor in these next few minutes. But before we do that though, two things, Ashton. The first one is, as you're talking about, humble bragging to leadership. So James mentioned something which sparked the reality that, and I've heard this a lot at the conference, our industry is young. Does that give room? So I got two questions for you. Does that give room for diversity to be more malleable because it's not etched into a particular corporate trajectory just yet? So that's question number one. Is it early enough for that change to happen, where it's not, we're just showing up like in Chicago, and then it's like, everything is back to normal? So that's first. Or is it right timing? And then number two is, have you ever felt as if you've been tokenized by a company or organization that has been entrenched, right, with having a lack of diversity? And can you describe what happened? So
sure.
Hit those two.
So definitely it is perfect timing for folks like us and others to be embedding cultural ethos, diversity, equity, inclusion into our employee value propositions and into our brand identity. Because I've seen it too many times where, there's an EVP and then there's a diversity manifesto, or there's a big project and then here's a diversity stance on the side. So like, it always feels like for whatever reason, diversity, DEI is always adjacent to the larger project, but now is the time to embed it into all that we do. Like, and that's what our superpower is, because naturally that's what we're going to do, because we are the diverse peoples. We are the URMs. We are that acronym that they're always throwing around when it comes to hiring and recruiting goals. So I think it's a perfect timing for us to use that superpower to embed DEI, cultural nuances, cultural ethos into these brand identities. So yeah, especially with the industry being young, we could turn the industry on its ass and totally just make that the standard. My old manager, Deanna, knows, she told us every day, set the standard. Okay. Don't go with the flow, you set the standard. So yeah, I think it's absolutely the right time for us to be able to do that. And then I don't know if anybody's ever seen the GoDaddy career site or any GoDaddy collateral, but yes, I have been a token at a company before, even so tokenized that my company outed me and didn't even realize they were outing me as LGBT before I could come out myself. Very interesting experience. I really learned to be patient and forgiving and give people a lot of grace. But at the same time, I had to learn how to stand up for myself, and also turn those token moments into like a Beyonce moment. And so when I say Beyonce moment, think about Beyonce right now. She just dropped a little EP. It's house music, so it's right on point for the summer. But with the EP, she had a $50 mystery box, but also told you to quit your job, which was very contradictory, because how much for the mystery box? Like, I quit my job, Beyonce, I don't know. But it's that when I talk about Beyonce moment, I think about that, you have this moment where you're thrust out into the forefront, what else do you have to capitalize on that moment? Are you going to, throw something on social media? Are you going to start a Black and Brown and EB group? Are you going to do a discussion? Like, what comes next? What comes next immediately now that you have this captive audience? So yeah, that's what I had to learn to do in being tokenized at my first tech company, was really figure out how to take hold of those moments and plan around them so that I could have a Beyonce moment instead of just being a token and just, being whatever they want me to be at that moment. It's like, no, identify who you are in this space and then run with it. So, whenever there was like a photo shoot that they wanted me to be in, cool, but you're going to give me a portrait because I need new professional headshots, because I'm going to now use this stuff to speak at conferences and apply for conferences and go get my name out there instead of just being for GoDaddy. So that was definitely something I had to learn, pick up on, and really train myself to always be on top of. And then when I left GoDaddy, I ended up at a company that doesn't really support that kind of stuff. So that's why I was like, okay, well, you have rules against us capitalizing on these things, but you just want to use us in the meantime. Okay, I got to go. So I had to realize that in companies trying to use me as a token, because I guess there aren't too many Black girls that are professional with bright blue hair and a septum piercing and that DJ and all of this other stuff. So yeah, they want to put me on a pedestal, but I had to figure out what I needed out of that experience as well. What I'm adding to your value, but what are you adding to my value? So that's what I'm thinking I always had to put into play whenever, hey, Ashton, you want to do this thing? Yeah, cool. But I need something out of it too. So really making that understanding at that company where, know that Ashton is going to do something with this moment if you're going to put her in this position was really, how that ended up. So
that's great. So using leverage as or finding leverage in the opportunity. So pretty much pushing the boundary of the opportunity, because I mean, you are through their lens, through a corporate lens, you are the opportunity, right? For them, it's like, well, now I'm going to make you. Let's reciprocate that. Let's ride this wave together. In a sense, it sounds like what you're saying. So this is good. So John brought up a little early, he says the life of an EB professional is one constantly bringing people along, educating and justifying your job, and which is a great point. Now, Pearl says she didn't really realize that there was a lack of Black and brown folks in talent brand, considering that there was a lot of emphasis on DEI. Listen, for a lot of folk who are working in branding. Yeah. And Andrea, you brought up a great point. I got to find it here. This is a little different than like finding the comments on Facebook. Hold on, give me 1 second. You mentioned, I wonder how y'all feel about having to tokenize others in your work. How do you avoid it when we also need to select people from different identities? Now, the conversation is probably happening right now. So we've got a few minutes. I'm going to open the floor because I haven't seen any of the replies, but I'm looking like people might be replying to you, Andrea. So if there's anyone who really feels that whatever you wrote is really a sticking point, go ahead, unmute yourself and come out. I'm just going to continue looking through and see if there's anything else that I can pull to the front here.
I'll say this, one thing that I've always tried to do when having to like cast diverse people for things is that part of it is also creating an opportunity to get them in rooms with the people that matter. So not only are you going to be in this photo shoot, but I'm going to make sure that you also attend the conference that we're going to use the photo shoot for. So not only are you going to be on the career site, but also I want to make sure that you are speaking on behalf of the company on other opportunities. Do you want to teach at this workshop that the company's doing? What are your skill sets? Where else can I place you where you have strong skills that we can highlight? So that's always been my thing. I don't want to just say, hey, you want to be in this picture we're going to use all the time? I want to also work with you on a continual basis so that you're not just in this picture, but you can now utilize this picture to show, okay, this is where I started, but now these are all the other things I do around being a part of this one group or one entity or this ERG.
Love
Yeah,
that.
that's good.
Love that.
John.
Can I jump in? So
Yes, yes.
So Ashton, I love that, and setting people up for other opportunities to get exposure internally that has a material benefit beyond just
Retention.
exploitation, as it were. I think one of the biggest challenges, and one of the ways that I approached this was connecting DEI into the employer brand efforts, because if you want to showcase diversity, that is an entire function whose job it is to ensure that diversity is not only upheld, but education and modeling the behavior. So connecting the dots there with ERGs and so forth. But then also you have to really dig another layer deeper with the individuals to understand how has their lived experience been at the organization, and would they even want their face on these materials and websites and so forth. Because that is a bitter reflection sometimes when they get tapped to be in these pictures, these video shoots, and they're just coming off of a meeting where they were the only one in the room. They couldn't throw up a dissenting opinion. They just got microaggressive emails from their colleagues or managers. And now you're asking me to be the face of the brand. Like there's a lot underneath that iceberg, right? Or underneath that water of the people that we're promoting. And living the values of the company where, and I'm sure we've all dealt with that, where you're like, all right, I'm building this brand. I want to make sure the culture is reflected, but I know they're not repping exactly what they're saying. Like, that. And that's a conundrum that you deal with as a employer brander, because you know how the sausage is made, but your job is to attract talent to join you. And oh, by the way, you want people that look like you to come join. But do you always feel like you should be inviting them into the burning building? Like these are real things. These are real things. And so, there's ways that you can start to empower employer brand to go beyond just the superficial and the imagery and, the fancy marketing tactics, and really start to think about, does authenticity also mean just going beyond heartstrings and emotions? What about accountability? Isn't that a great expression of authenticity, owning and ownership of one's current state, past mistakes, and then setting a pathway for the future? Like that, that's where I want to see the future of employer brand go. Right? Not just the heartstrings, because that's ubiquitous. Everybody does that. Who's raising their hand and being like, no, we were shit. We were trash in the past. Horrible. Here's what we're doing to fix that. Here's why we need your help. And here's where we want to get to. Come join us. Like that's a different message.
Yeah. I think that level of authenticity I think that's key in any aspect, like whatever you're creating from an employer brand standpoint, whether it's from a diversity standpoint, whether it's from a, not going to work you 80 hours a week standpoint, or, whatever it is, like it needs to be rooted in reality. And, if it is a company that, they work people too hard, or if it's a company where, your work-life balance is a little bit off, if that's something that's being actively changed, then yes, like address it. But no, in no way should you dress it up. But I will say, from a diversity standpoint, I've used kind of that token, I guess, position to pick the people that I want. Like in a lot of instances, like when you think about what's created, by people, by white people in general, they're just picking whoever they want. Like, and if it's all white, like that's their viewpoint. So sometimes I allow myself to, like, what's my viewpoint, and then this is what I'm going to create. If this attracts more people of color, or, to our organization, that might not even be the goal. But like, at the same time, it's like I'm able to create, what I want to create because I'm in this position. I'm able to work with these vendors, oh, there's a vendor that, my company historically works with that doesn't hire anybody Black, or doesn't hire any person of color. Like, because I've been there, I've met with them. It's always white people. Well, I'm going to work with this other company because I have the ability to make that choice. Like that's also, that's also a cool thing, like in our space, because we are decision makers in, to a degree, in that regard. So like we can actually choose like what message we want to put out there, who we work with, where we spend those company dollars. And it doesn't have to be an initiative. It's just you being that one person making that choice because you can push a button. So like also like recognizing that. And I don't know, like, because, in a sense, like I talk to some people and they're like, you're just really spoiled because like you don't really care about working. And that and that's true. Like, I'll be honest, like when I started at Macy's, I came from like, I was fine doing what I was doing. So it was like everything was bonus. So when I came in, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna work, like people are people. I'm not gonna change myself for if I'm talking to a vice president or if I'm talking to an associate, if I'm talking to an intern, like everybody's the same. So like I've always just kind of carried it that way since, I got into this space. And, as I've risen, like obviously like I've become even more confident. But like the reality is though, we all have that ability. Like we all can kind of, make these changes or make certain decisions. Because again, like, the people that we're working with, or I guess the people that we're working for, so to speak, the internal clients or what have you, like you're the expert. You have the budget, you have those dollars. Like you don't have to necessarily work with, who the company historically worked with, unless, you're in pharma or something like that. And it's like this crazy vetting process that you have to go through. Like that's a whole different story. But you're still able to kind of work through that, and there's workarounds, but just being creative in a sense to say like, I want to be able to create, a message, based on my viewpoint, because, the majority has done that for years. Like that's literally all they've ever done. So, you go beyond just, the lip service of where you hear, these DEI, like, I mean, even at Lilly, like I loved working there, but, Joy Fitzgerald, she's over at United Health now, but she was our chief diversity officer. Now the chief diversity officer is a white lady, like, just like you said, John, she's usually a white woman, like in those roles. And it was kind of like an uproar when she got the job, because it's just like, you're not diverse, like, so like that, that it is what it is. But that didn't affect my.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose James?
No.
Like they were able to do whatever.
Oh, okay. You're back. You're back. No, you froze for like a good second there, James. We weren't sure what was going on.
All good.
No, but this is actually, it works in our favor because it's 6:01.
Well,
It's
before
6:01.
you wrap up, it was
Yes.
just something that John said earlier. It was around like having to cast diverse people in, the things that you're doing. And then like you said, sometimes they've just gotten out of that meeting where they got microaggressions, people coming at them sideways. Somebody done said a joke that was too uncool in the lunchroom. I loved finding those people on accident, because I would actually sit there and say, tell me all about it, because I wanted to know what experiences people were actually having. So I would not pressure them into doing any more photo shoots or anything like that, but I would come back around and see how they're doing, because I want to know what's the real thing that people are feeling in these different parts of the organization, in these different verticals, in these different areas. I know my job is great and I love it, but not everybody feels that way. So I used to love finding those people that were salty and didn't want to be in the photo shoots, because now I really want to talk to you, and we about to be friends, because I'm going to talk to you a lot. So I used to love that, because it always gave me insight as to what was going on. Is it validating what's on Glassdoor when we're seeing these negative reviews come in? And now I have data that I can take back to leaders and show them it ain't right. And that's why we're not retaining. So don't push me to go out and find them if you can't keep them. So now you got to figure out how to keep them before I go out and find them. So that was always a big thing for me.
Yeah, many companies, DEI is just a performative initiative, and that's it. It's really surface level. And so I will say, oh wow, I will say this, man. Wish we could extend this. First of all, James, Ashton, thank you so much. The insight that you brought. And then those who are chiming in, Andrea, Claire, John, I think Pearl just left. This is insightful. And this is just going to be the first of what we hope is many conversations and then in-person experiences. Because at the end of the day, it's really forums like this where we're not just talking about it, but we are actually in the space and we're making a difference where we are. We're using and actually having these experiences, but we're sharing with others like, okay, well, this is how I've navigated through this journey. That's impactful, especially for someone like me, right? I have been a solopreneur for a very long time, coming back into like agency world. So it's different, and so just listening to the narratives is really also helping me too. And I will say this, there's definitely hope, because even though the two individuals who've created the Talent Brand Alliance and the Talent Brand Summit are two white men, I know one of them. I work for one of them. And the biggest thing that I can say is that with the intentionality that I have been able to grow in that company, not feel like I was either small, I had to walk on eggshells. I know that, and just the way that the world is right now, you know, it's white people that are building these things, right? But we have this opportunity though to leverage that, and I couldn't leave without saying that. I remember Claire, to your point, when you said that even across the pond, that these conferences, usually the speakers are white men, white women, like, you know, and he told me when we were having a diversity conversation, and I was like, hey, are you going to, you know, this conference? He was like, no. They invited me to speak, and I was like, it's too many of me. Like, get somebody else. Y'all got too many white people already. I don't need to be another one. And you know, I'm thinking, you know, with that spirit, I know that Talent Brand Summit, whether it's the next one or whatever initiatives that they create, is going to give us the room to be able to really, like you were telling, like you were sharing, Ashton, to just turn things upside down and to really make it just as much our space as it is our counterparts. So yeah, this was great, y'all. I suck at endings. So what I will say that we hope that this discussion at least sparks some sort of seed in your, plants a seed to understand that you aren't alone, and that there are ways to navigating when you feel like you are the only. Just know that you're not, and you've got to support.
Thank y'all so much.
No, thank you for coming.
Yeah.